Jessica, fast forward.
Good afternoon, I'm Eula Clark, Mayor of the City of Stewart, called into order the special meeting of the Stewart City Commission, Community Redevelopment Agency, and Community Redevelopment Board on today, April 26, 2021, 4:30 p.m., 121 Southwest Flagler Avenue, Stewart, Florida. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
City Commission and Community Redevelopment Agency, Chairperson Clark.
Yes?
Vice Chairperson Matheson.
Here.
Board Member Bruner.
Here.
Board Member McDonald.
Here.
Board Member Meyer.
Here.
Board Member Kempenny.
Here.
Board Member Walson.
Here.
Community Redevelopment Board, Chairperson Lewis. Vice Chairperson Kempenny.
Here.
Board Member Dooley.
Here.
Board Member Jacobson. Board Member Schroth.
Here.
Board Member Waka.
Here.
Board Member Walson.
Here.
Is there a quorum present?
There is.
Okay, thank you. On this fine day, let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by our Vice Mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Our next item is to approve this agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Kempenny, Board Member Kempenny, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a presentation from our Community Redevelopment Agency regarding Guy Davis Park and Resolution 03-2021. We'll have the presentation before we go to the reading of the resolution, or would you like to read the resolution now, Mr. Mortel?
It's actually not a presentation, but it's a budget.
But it's a,
amendment.
yeah, well,
But
presentation.
it's resolution number 03-2021 CRA, a resolution of the Board of the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Stewart, Florida, authorizing budget amendment number 2 to the fiscal year 2021 CRA budget to transfer funds from the CRA fund balance to allocate for the site planning and design of the Guy Davis Park in the amount of $344,517, providing for conflicts, severability, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you. And in explanation,
Thank you. Panagani Savda, CRA Administrator for the record. So as Mike Mortel read the resolution, this is a budget amendment to allocate $344,517 for the site planning and design of the Guy Davis Community Park. The scope of the work will be completed in 2 phases. The first phase includes data collection, survey, utility coordination, conceptual design to develop a more accurate site plan, and engineers' probable costs for the improvements of the park. The site plan and the engineer probable costs will be presented to the board before we move forward to phase 2. And at that time, staff will be looking for direction as far as the funding sources to move forward to the second phase on how to pay for the final engineering design, civil plans, and construction of the project. Currently, the second phase is estimated to be additional $362,000, and the construction of the project is about $5 million. Just to go over what the improvements will consist of, we are looking at doing a new multi-purpose field, grass fields for the playing surfaces, parking lot improvements, new stage for performances, sail shade over the new stage area, secondary ingress and egress into the park, so we're possibly looking at Old Dixie Highway or Southeast 14th Street for the second entrance, interactive aquatic play equipment, pour and play surfacing for existing playground, pavilions for picnic or some birthday party events, restrooms, walking and jogging trail, event lawn area, outdoor fitness area for equipment, lighting for all areas in the park, landscaping and irrigation, and project identification signage. So those would be all part of the phase 1 design, and we will provide the engineer's costs that will include all those items. Staff is requesting approval of resolution number 03-2021, authorizing a budget allocation of $344,517 for phase 1 of the development of site plan and design for the Guy Davis Park.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
I'll move approval of all three 2021 for discussion.
Second.
Madam Chair, this is a CRA vote for CRA.
Yeah, this is both bodies are the CRA. Well, we only have one represent,
No, we're fine.
They're
everybody's
fine.
fine.
I have a question for Ms.
I don't have a
Gonzalez,
question,
Mayor.
too.
The information states that the community outreach meetings will be virtual. I understand that now that might be of best interest, but I think in-person meetings at the Tenth Street Community Center might be more beneficial and reach,
More people.
reach more of an audience. What's the timeline for that, and is that flexible
So
as
that's
far as
going to
in
be,
person?
right, so that's part of the second phase, and we're going to revisit the scope of work for the second phase once we have the direction from the board when we present the site plan. We've already been out to the community and did the first site plan, presented the first master plan to the community. So now we're going to actually design and share that with the board members and get direction from the board members before we go out to the community, and that's going to be part of the phase 2. So we will look at probably doing more interactive meeting, not virtual.
Okay, so if it's phase 2, I mean, I guess it's hard to predict the future, but I'd be more apt to approve it.
Yeah, so
versus
that's,
phase 2 as well.
so that scope of work will come before you.
Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
and in details.
Okay, I had something along the same lines to make sure that before something comes back to us, that, or when the next thing comes back to us, that we make sure that community groups, especially those who most frequently use the East Stewart Center, that they get notice, even though we put it in the newspaper and we have it here, of this thing, just to make sure that we're trying to coordinate as much as possible. My question is this, and maybe it's more, I hate to pull up a staff name, but Mr. Kralski, and just going back into memory, some time ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we had said that we were going to try to apply for some money from the state through our state representative. And we were trying to get some money there, and we had asked for the money because we were trying to work with making the fields, the ball fields, something or the type of surface material that we could try to do the Little League game, softball there, so that people could come from all over the United States, so we could have championships. And that type of material for the field was gonna be something, was it Babe Ruth
Artificial
group?
turf.
Yeah, so now I'm wondering if we're gonna do this and to make it long-term, if any of this money would be used, or if that would be grass, or if it would be whatever, because we wanna have a surface that can be multi-purpose or whatever, so I wanna find out. That was like
May I respond?
4 years ago or something.
So staff had a in-depth discussion about artificial turf versus grass. And the primary reason for us deciding that grass was the better option to go with is because our other fields at that location are all grass. And for artificial turf, you have to have a special set of cleats. So now we're gonna require all the kids that play to have 2 different sets of cleats. And then if you're having people come from out of town to play, you have to specify what field you're gonna play so they know which type of cleats to bring with you. Plus, we have to buy additional equipment to keep that surface area, it's like a vibrator type thing that vibrates the entire surface to move the beads underneath it around. So you have to do that, and you have to have people trained to be able to sew the surface back together. If we were redoing every surface field out there, it might be a good option to do it with, but with doing one surface field and for a multi-purpose field, we just didn't feel it was economically a wise idea to do, especially for having parents have to now accommodate 2 separate types of fields and what field am I playing on today, kind of a thing.
Okay, because I thought that that was a state of the art that was being pushed at the time, because I know at the time we had a commissioner who had played softball when she was younger, and everybody had talked about having this Babe Ruth thing, you know, and that we were kind of preparing for that in the future, so
This is
I
a,
just
but it's not
want
a
to be
baseball
sure.
field, it's a multi-purpose field, so soccer, lacrosse, football.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
Baseball field, yeah.
I also wanted to rip it up next year because some new vogue has come into being.
No, I mean, the artificial turf is fantastic, and it is if you're doing large tournament plays and that kind of stuff. I mean, my kids played at Boomba, up in North Florida, which all is artificial turf. And it's really great, especially for playing, as soon as the rain is done, you're on the field playing. But the flip side of that is, I don't think that's the kind of play we're gonna end up having here. I don't think we're gonna have tournament play like that on these fields.
Mayor,
Yes.
also, the Tourist Development Council did help put some money into our sailfish ball fields for tournaments. The first one, you know, kind of got delayed a bit for COVID, but Mr. Charlesky could probably expand on that as far as
Mr.
hosting some
Charlesky.
events at our sailfish ball fields, I believe with the Cal Ripken series.
Yes,
So events at the fields are still in the future for the city.
Martin County TDC granted us money for us to being able to put in new cabling so that that can be broadcasted. And although COVID delayed that Babe Ruth World Series, we intend on having them back this next year, which would be at the end of summer. So we still are getting that tourism development bounce by using sailfish ball fields for the intended purpose of that they are. And the vision of the Guy Davis Park would be of a multi-purpose park that has low maintenance and highest use.
okay. Mr. McDonald?
And I just was gonna say, I remember that vividly, and just one of the things I remember from my research on the artificial turf, is that in addition to everything that Dave Dias said about the different equipment, you do get savings on, you do get some savings on some maintenance costs because you're not cutting it, so forth. But the artificial turf has a lifespan, and when that span ends, you have to replace it. And so effectively, you're replacing your ball fields every 10, 12, 15, depending on the lifespan of the field. So at the time, we discussed 10 years. So you may save $100,000 a year in maintenance, but you're 10 years, you might need $1 million to replace the turf. So it's a balancing act, and if you have the right people coming in, the right tournaments, it's awesome. The stuff is supposed to be great, but it's not right for every instance. And so it's something to really think hard on, and unless you're bringing in that tournament play, it's probably not the best service.
If I could just as a point of reference, I don't think that Babe Ruth would even consider these types of fields as for the tournament anyway.
No, I don't
because
think they
this is
would.
This is a cross
It's a
type
different
field
location.
anyway.
Yeah, they're not gonna use multi-purpose fields unless it was a dire emergency.
Any other comments from the board members? Community Development Board and City Commission, it's a joint meeting, Mr. Schwartz?
We talked about this at our CRB meeting, so I think we're all well versed on it.
Okay, Mary, did you get the motion in the second?
I did.
Okay, are there any public comments on item number 1, which is resolution number 03-2021? Any public comments? Mary?
Vice Chairperson Matheson,
Yes.
Board Member Brunner,
Yes.
Board Member McDonald,
Yes.
Board Member Wilson,
Yes.
Board Member Brunner,
Yes.
Board Member Campenny,
Yes.
Board Member Dooley,
Yes.
Board Member Schroth,
Yes.
Board Member Walker,
Yes,
I
I
think
don't
you were
think we
just-
have to vote because it's CRA.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
But
Yes.
yes,
We've already voted, yes.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Okay, it's just CRA, so it's just one
Board
of
Member
them.
Meyer
Yes.
and Chairperson Clark.
Yes.
Thank you.
And a couple extra yes.
Pick some of those out of it.
Just making sure you had a majority.
Item number 2, presentation of Seminole streetscape design and undergrounding of the overhead utilities within the project limit.
Yes, so this was initiated to improve the alleyway, to create a more inviting space for our pedestrians and support redevelopment and development activities along Seminole Street and in our downtown. This project includes undergrounding of overhead utilities, drainage improvements, removal of dumpster enclosures, which we've already resolved, and we've removed the existing dumpsters that were there, improved on-street parking, pedestrian scale lighting that we have throughout downtown, benches, and landscaping. The design was presented to the Downtown Business Association, Main Street, when we had a 30% design and 60% design for their feedback. Overall, we received very positive feedback from both groups and downtown businesses. The streetscape design is now at 90%, and so we really wanted the input from our boards. We did apply for the water quality grant in the amount of $274,000 for the utilization of the permeable paver block within our project limit. We have been selected by the Department of Environmental Protection in the first step of the approval process, and it will be submitted to the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, for final approval. We can expect to receive a notice of award by September 2022 if we are awarded. Currently, there is a $1.25 million budgeted for this project, which includes the undergrounding and streetscape. Danny, he's our consultant, Danny Brandon, consultant, city's consultant for the undergrounding design. And Brian Good, he's our consultant for the streetscape design. Both are here to make their presentation. We'll start with Danny, and then Brian will follow his presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Danny Brandon, Brandon and Gillespie Consulting Engineers. We have been involved in many undergrounding projects from various cities that many of you are familiar with. And we're happy to be working with you on this project here today. This project will place all the facilities that are on overhead, including Florida Power and Light and Communications, Comcast, AT&T, underground. It will include all the connections and moving all the customers from the overhead system to the new underground system. We are at the point now where we have received cost estimates from the utilities, and we have the FPL estimate will be good for 180 days. During that time, we will approach getting it approved and executed. The construction, and I'll talk about the easements. We did discuss easements. We have a very low number of easements, but we discussed easement with property owners, and they were very positive on it, so we're feeling that there's going to be no issues with getting the easements we want. And we have Plan B contingencies. If something happens, they sell the property and we get a different opinion, we will be able to survive that also. The typical way we do these projects is we have the town hire a contractor. Under the Public Service Commission tariffs that FPL follows, the town is allowed to install all the new FPL underground facilities. So we typically hire a contractor to do that on behalf of the town. The benefits to that is if you have FPL crews working on a job, they may have other priorities, they pull off, and then they come back whenever they have no other higher priorities. These projects have no revenue for the FPL, so therefore they're at the bottom of the priority list. So for that reason, and for the reason that when we're putting in the FPL facilities, we could also put the conduits in for the communication companies, and it's a cost savings way of doing that work. So there's those two reasons we have always had the towns hire a contractor to install the underground. The contractor procurement step will be the one that's coming up after we finish the easement acquisition. And typically, we assist the town with developing a scope of work. In the scope of work, we have a number of incentives for the contractor not to have bad behavior on the site, not to leave materials and trash on the site, to be very thoughtful about the community, and maintain to the highest degree possible community harmony in doing these projects. We have had very good luck with the tightness of these specifications that we've used in almost every town, that we have almost zero change orders, that everything is very clearly laid out so the contractor knows exactly what his responsibilities are. The underground construction is according to the schedule, it's looking like August to January at this point, August 21 to January 22. After we would complete installing all the underground and the underground conduit for communications companies, then the communications company would come in, AT&T and Comcast, and they would install their cable and their cabinets. We don't allow them typically to work at the same time with the power company installation, because we get into contention with who damaged what and those kind of things. So it has always been a better solution to have them sequential when the underground utilities or FPL and the conduit are being put in, not to let them be on site doing their placement of pedestals and things like that. The schedule here, once the communications companies finish this, is that they will be through in approximately, we plan October 2022. The communication companies are somewhat out of our control, but we get the best estimates we can, and then we push them and prod them to try to meet those deadlines. Eventually, we'll prepare documentation on the closeout. There will be documentation on the as-built, so where FPL stuff was installed, have an as-built survey to make sure that the facilities were placed in the right location, and we'll send these documents to the power company. Generally speaking, Comcast and AT&T do not require as-built documents. In some cases, the City of Stewart may want some as-bills for those facilities, but typically we do not. Have any questions?
So, was back in 2019, when the legislature passed continued to expand the rights for communications companies to expand 5G pole siting, even in undergrounded utility areas. When you say the acquiring of easements, is that acquiring them back from the utility companies, or no? Is that from the private property owner?
We will be acquiring easements from the private property owners so that we can set a couple of transformers outside the road right away.
So my only concern here is that we might go through all of this good expense to underground the utility lines, only to then find with 5G expansion and the way that the state has completely limited our control over the local implementation, for them to come in and put poles every 50 feet with small cell repeaters on them. Have you seen that in your experience at all in any of your undergrounded streets or towns?
I've seen them try to do that in Gulfstream. They tried to come in and put antennas on the existing concrete poles on the State Road A1A right of way. And we had a contract with AT&T for them to take all their facilities off these poles. And we brought the External Affairs Director from Fort Lauderdale in and discussed it with him, and he had it cease and desist, and they went away. They typically are looking for poles to mount their equipment on. They're typically not interested in having to install the poles.
Sure.
And they're also looking for power availability. And if there's no poles, then they would have to run to wherever the power is. So they're not very likely going to come in. 5G is a very short range.
Right.
If 4G was good for 10 miles, 5G is good for like 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet.
A couple hundred feet, yeah. So just making sure, you haven't seen any cases yet where,
No.
okay, thanks.
Sir, are you finished, sir?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Brian will give
Yeah.
a second presentation.
Since it's before 5, good afternoon. Brian Good with Kimley Horn. I have the pleasure of showing some pretty pictures outlining the improvements that Pinal had already spoken to you about for Seminole Street between St. Lucie and Colorado Avenue. This is an overview of the corridor improvements from St. Lucie Avenue down to Colorado Avenue. I would like to make a high point of noting the parking stall availability and existing today versus what it will be in the future. We are adding 2 parking stalls overall to the corridor. We are losing 2 parking stalls along St. Lucie Avenue, as I believe it's the Riverwalk Cafe has asked for an expansion of sidewalk facilities to provide for outside dining in that area, which has removed 2 parking stalls from the availability of the corridor. So overall, it's a net gain of 2 parking stalls. This is a perspective view looking east or along Seminole Street from St. Lucie Avenue. Seminole Street will be a mixture of a curbless street. At this end, it's curbless. There are no curves. Everything's flush. The sidewalk, the parking stall, the travelways, everything's flush. You see those silver bollards. That provides a barrier of protection between the pedestrian way and on-street parking and the travelways in this portion of the corridor. This is further down the corridor looking closer at the post office arcade. This is the curb section where we have a 6-inch curb. You can see some landscaping, the potential opportunities for some outside dining in this portion of the corridor. Landscape material along the corridor is proposed to consist of foxtail palms, royal palms in the vicinity of Sailfish Cove. In the area of the post office arcade, we are proposing wild date palms, a variegated lily, gold mound, and we do have several bench facilities along the corridor to provide an opportunity for people to sit down and take a break.
Like this half-arch rails.
What's that?
With the skateboarders used to do the half-arch.
Oh, yeah. So Pinal spoke to you about the stormwater innovation that we're proposing in this portion of the city, and it's consisting of the utilization of the permeable articulated paver blocks. This is a little bit different than our permeable pavers. I have an example of one of the blocks over on this side of the building, so you can actually get an idea of what one of the blocks will consist of. They're approximately 12 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches thick. They are interlocked together when placed, and then they sit on a stone aggregate to provide storage of stormwater to allow for a greater amount of infiltration and water quality treatment prior to discharge to the lagoon. When Seminole Street is completed, we'll be able to capture and store approximately about 1.5 inches of runoff within the roadway base section, which is a very positive attribute.
is because 90% of the pollutants is typically contained within the first inch of runoff from the corridor. So it provides for the greatest capture of pollutants prior to discharge to the lagoon. That's one of the reasons why the EPA's recognized it and acknowledged it as a potential grant recipient for their 319 water quality grant. Danny spoke to you a few moments ago about schedule. The items in blue represent the activities associated with undergrounding franchise utilities. The orange across the top is what the best information we have available relative to Sailfish Cove construction schedule. And then the rows in the bottom, the green, represent Seminole Street. So Seminole Street is anticipated to be advertised for construction in October of 22 and being able to start construction in January, such that it will closely follow the completion of Sailfish Cove as well as the undergrounding. As everyone's familiar with Seminole Street, I'm sure it's a fairly confined corridor, and having multiple contractors using it for points and ingress and egress at any one given time is not advantageous. So we're trying to schedule the construction activities to minimize the amount of contractors that are in the corridor at any one time, as well as we're trying to maximize the city's dollars relative to restoration. Once the franchise utilities are underground, we're not spending money to restore the corridor, only then to rip it out for the streetscape improvements that we're speaking about this afternoon. So those have all been taken into consideration. The budget, Pinal had already gone over with you. The undergrounding utilities is estimated at $300,000. The Seminole Street streetscape improvements is estimated at $840,000 with a total project cost with a contingency of $1.1 million. These are rounded numbers because I don't want to go into too much detail. The CRA has budgeted $1.25 million for the overall project, so the project is within the funding that's allocated by the city and the CRA. There are potential city reimbursables consisting of Sailfish Cove has been allocated or designated a potential reimbursement of upwards of $83,000. And as Pinal had mentioned, there is potential grant reimbursements up to $274,000 returned back to the city for this project with the acceptance of the EPA's grant. And with that, I'd be more than glad to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Meyer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for the landscaping, if we could touch on that quickly, are the palms set in stone? Can we ask for some shade trees, something that would give a little bit more shade?
Second.
We are advocates of shade trees. The only thing I will ask the city to consider is we do have the whole roadway and on-street section, our permeable paver section. So shade trees typically will have more aggressive root systems, which doesn't bode well with that type of water quality treatment, as well as the corridor is about 30 feet wide. So, I have sewer, water mains, storm drainage. It's a fairly compact corridor. And when you look for window availability to plant a tree, such as an oak, that will provide a shade that we're speaking of, we look for greater windows so as we don't ultimately impact utilities.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking oak because, we've already ripped all of those out of Osceola Flagler, but I think, the city has looked at other alternatives that have less invasive root structures. The Japanese fern tree looks like a pretty good candidate. There are other, even if it were more crepe myrtles that were not coppiced and pruned to allow for a single trunk to grow up tall, they don't have particularly large root systems. We'll talk a little bit more, but
I would be glad to hear any suggestions you may have. We certainly, as this project's not scheduled to go to construction until 2022, we have a little bit of time to discuss that should the board choose to.
And then, as far as the connection between the curbed section of the street back near the arcade and the curb-less, how is that articulation going to be? Is it just a gradual deep incline?
Yes, sir. If I may, I can jump back to. So the transition of the curb, starting in this area, this is all curbless.
Right.
Back to about in this location. So from this point over to Colorado will be the curb section, and there is a transition of probably 7 feet where the curb rises up, meeting ADA criteria.
Is there any reason why we didn't do curbless the entire way?
Well, when we looked at curbs on the entire way, really, it was really being driven by this, just because of the density of those bollards. The bollards are running me about, I think, $2,800 to $3,000 a piece. And when you look at the density of bollards that would need to be placed along this run of sidewalk immediately adjacent to the travelway, it had a fairly substantial price tag. And when we were going through the CRA and looking at budget and trying to balance the pros and cons, this hybrid section of curbless and curb streets, what came out of it.
Okay. There was one, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Just to follow up on his, I agree, I think that we should go as much shade as possible. I noticed that the three palms that you showed in your presentation, only the date palm seemed to have a crown of significant shade capability. The other two, Royal's just not gonna give you anything, and neither is the other one that's there. So I would avoid those and come up with some all possibilities of a larger palm crown, if that's what you have to end up with.
Yes, sir.
Shade.
I will say, if I may add, the Royals really came out of Sailfish Cove, because I believe that's what was approved with their site plan, and we were really looking to mimic the Royals on the opposite side of the street to complement the site plan with Sailfish Cove. So we wouldn't have Royals on one side and Foxtails on the other side, so that's really how the introduction of the Royals came to be.
Okay, Mr. Meyer?
Well, I also just want to, shade trees are very good in general, especially along right-of-ways. I also understand that it's quite a narrow roadway, and also we have what will be a 4-story building on the right-hand side, along the riverside of the Sailfish Cove. And then we have the other taller building there too. Yeah, so,
Yes.
You will get some shade naturally from the built environment, but I think more shade trees are better to buffer the hardscape, and I think, if it can be tied to some of the other plantings that we have done, like you said, to be harmonious with sailfish, we have the queen crepes throughout the other roadways in the downtown area, so just a couple ideas there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Dias?
Mayor, just to roll back real quick on Commissioner Meyer's 5G comment earlier. The staff is preparing a 5G ordinance to come before you, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the items that are still allowed, one of the few items that are allowed by the state, is to regulate them out of historic districts. So if it's the desire of this body, we could add that to the ordinance. It's not currently in there.
Madam Mayor, a question. I support, obviously, the comments on the shade trees. I don't know if I'd be supportive of it, but one option might be shade cloths, shade sails in areas that would seem fit. But again, I would prefer more shade trees as well. But I was wondering could you describe in a little more detail how the water is going to flow? If that first inch of water is going to flow down under the pavement, permeable pavement, and then is that all expected to percolate out, and then anything over that inch is going to overflow into the river? Is that summary?
So, yes. The first inch and a half will be stored in the pavement section. There is a run of under drain to ensure recovery, so that for some reason it doesn't sit wet and become a maintenance issue of just building algae and becoming unfunctional. So there is an under drain to ensure recovery. Anything in addition to that inch and a half would drain out as it does today. There's curb inlets that the surface runoff would go to and then out of the corridor, as it does today. So today, there is absolutely no treatment for any of the runoff, and this project will provide for an inch and a half of treatment.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Troy.
Madam Mayor, thank you. This question is actually for Dave Dias. Hey, Dave, a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago, we got contacted by Congressman Bass' office regarding road projects. And then this road project looks like it might fit into that scope. And so, Congress, and just for anybody that doesn't know, Congressman Bass' office they're working on an infrastructure bill, and they're looking for road projects because they brought back earmarks. Maybe this would be one that we need to provide to them and see if we can get some.
I sent it to his aide, and I didn't get a
Oh, okay, this one was sent to them? Okay, great, that's what I wanted, because it could be 50% of the project paid for by the federal government, and that would be really helpful.
Did that include railroad bridge projects by any chance?
Well, that was my next question.
Well,
It's a different batch of money.
different batch of money.
We'll take both.
Yeah, but, this was, these were this was basically shovel-ready projects that a community would have to pay for 50% and have it completed by 2024. And this looks like it, and I'm so glad that they identified, staff, and thank you very much for identified this project, and provided it to them. So this would just be a good one to make sure we at least have it in the mix to see if we can get one of those. They have no idea how much money each congressman's gonna get to spend in their community, but they did bring earmarks back for this bill, and so they're trying to, so everybody in Congress is trying to earmark money, so we might as
Well,
well.
let me see, a Republican who
Brian
knocks
Massey, his
Nancy
seniority.
Pelosi.
I'm not gonna go into that. That's not my issue. My issue is getting us, our job is to make sure that we at least get our request in.
Thank you,
Matt,
yes, sir.
What Dave said before, you should do everything you can to minimize the effects of 5G, because they are going to limit you more and more. If you noticed, I think I sent it to the manager and to the attorney, they had a bill up there to limit your ability to stop gas stations. So they're just gonna limit you more and more in what you can do for this type of stuff, so.
And neither Republican?
The citizens are fighting the poor and helpless businesses.
So anyways, I think you should take that under consideration.
All right, thank you. Yes, any comments on this presentation?
I just wanted to also remind the Indian River Lagoon Council, this could be a project to fund next budget cycle, so we should include this as a
Yeah.
application.
Absolutely, you should.
Okay, so this is a presentation, there's no vote or anything, but we have lots of considerations. Is there any other comment on this presentation from our board members?
I just have a
You
quick
have,
comment.
okay.
I think you mentioned that grant before, and we did look into it. And we would have to apply for the same element that we already applied for with the 319 grant. So you can't double dip, and so that's why we didn't apply this year for.
This year, we had an application in for septic to sewer, and
Okay.
that was awarded.
Okay, but I'm saying, are you talking about this project, Seminole Street project, to
Yeah, the
apply for?
Seminole, you should apply.
For next budget, for
The
next
next
budget
budget
cycle.
cycle.
It'll be next January 2022.
And if I might just make one comment, one spot that it would be real important to make sure that you did have shade trees is where the seating is, and it's an open area, because that's a heated up area right there, and there's no building right behind it.
Don't
So
worry,
that
Frank,
would be
We'll
a
take them out 1, 2, 3, one night.
important spot to do it, just.
3 in the morning.
Okay, do you have any other comments from any of our presenters? No other comments?
Thank you.
Okay. Even though there's no vote on this matter, we have a member of the public who has something to say on this matter. Ms. McBride?
I thought, Helen McBride, Flamingo Avenue. I thought for sure that Commissioner McDonald would ask this question. You're all saying sidewalks. How wide are the sidewalks? Now, I'm just a little person, but I'm down here every Sunday. And on Seminole, which is an alley, you're all saying roads and all that, but it's an alley. If you're driving down, I always give the pedestrians the right of way. I don't care if the guy behind me toots his horn. But you have, like, say it's a party of 6, especially, I'm just Sundays. And if someone's in they have a baby carriage, a wheelchair, a walker, they do just like most of us Americans would do. They walk on the road because the sidewalks are not wide enough. And then I saw those bars, whatever, he had a nice name for them. Thank you. I'm just concerned about we the people if, you know, if we could find a parking spot down by Wells Fargo when we're walking down, I'm telling you, it's the sidewalks, and I'm really shocked at Commissioner McDonald, because I tell everybody about Commissioner McDonald, and he's our sidewalk saver. That's my concern. We, the little people, sidewalks, I mean, the trees, you know how I love trees, and but that's my only concern, sidewalks. Thank you.
How wide are the sidewalks? Did they tell us?
They're standard, I think.
They vary.
The sidewalks vary between, probably 6 to 7 feet is the standard. There are a couple areas where right-of-way is very limited, that we have 4-foot wide sidewalks in a limited run. The areas around the post office arcade down in the crux where the wild date palms, it's probably about 15, 20 feet wide in that area. So that's where we're showing accommodations for potential outside dining to take place. So overall, I said it's probably about 6 to 7 feet in width.
One more question.
Okay, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to address Helen, and, yeah, actually, reason I didn't bring up the sidewalks is, Helen, was because they are wider in places, and the other places where they're not, it's just a limit of, right away. There's just no room for additional sidewalks, so, but I agree, I always want wider sidewalks, but we are getting a few places, where they will be a little bit wider.
And we're undergrounding the utilities.
Yes.
Yep.
So
it
we don't
does
have some
hold.
of the obstructions, and with getting rid of the dumpsters, that actually helps a lot, so,
The curveless sections.
you know.
I wanted to know how strong these bollards are. They're $2,800 a piece. I
It's a
noticed,
lot harder to run those over than a curb.
comparing the ones that are outside, or the ones that are on Osceola Street, they did get run over. Are these the same bollards, or are they gonna stop a car?
I'm not familiar with the ones that you installed on Osceola, but I would say that they are not the same. These are 42-inch stainless steel bollards that are 3.5 inches in diameter. The reason why we look for such a low-profile bollard is for the reasons that you were just discussing, is the sidewalk width. So we were trying to still maintain a functionality of the width of the sidewalk. They do sit in a 4-foot deep, 18-inch wide concrete base. It anchors the bollards, so they are fairly robust, but they would not be, I think it's 10K. They're not designed to stop a vehicle from driving through them, such as you may have at a post office where you're trying to create some physical barrier. These are not those type of barriers. So,
Which ones were you referring to that got run over?
One on Osceola Street.
Those don't have the concrete
Yeah,
base.
those are.
So these will be stronger and safer than
But a
those.
car will still drive through them if someone's got enough speed going.
I guess, I mean, it's a matter of speed and the weight of the car, but
I would assume that once the car went over them, that being underneath the car, they would stop it.
Did not stop the one at Osceola Street, it took them a couple of months to get them.
Well, the irony is, it's only curb, so the requirement is that if you don't have the curb, which is 4 or 5 inches, you have to have the bollard. But where you have the curb, there's no bollard at all required.
Right.
The likelihood of a car going 10 miles an hour, the curb's not gonna stop it at all. So the bollards are way more protective than having a
Exactly.
curb.
And at some point, they're gonna run over that bollard and pick up a 4-foot by 18-inch concrete chunk. And that is likely what's going to stop the show.
the bollards are safer than the ones on Osceola, and they're safer than the curb, so that was my question.
Okay, any other questions on this matter? Thanks to the consultants and engineers, and thanks to staff. And everybody has enough direction to think about. Okay,
Yes, thank you.
thank you so much.
Move approval of CRA minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. This is a matter for the city commission. I think we have all the city commissioners here. Award of RFP 2021-001 200, design of Guy Davis Community Park. Resolution 3920-21.
And this is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, to approve the award of RFP 20-21-200, design of Guy Davis Community Park to the top-ranked firm, Calvin Giordano and Associates of Port St. Lucie, Florida, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you.
I just have a brief presentation. The CRA board just voted to allocate funds for the design of this project. This item is to award the RFP to Calvin Giordano and Associate to develop the design and probable cost estimate for the project. So staff is just requesting approval of resolution number 39-2021 to award the RFP for the design of Guy Davis Park to Calvin Giordano and Associate. They are here if there are any specific questions as to the scope of work for phase 1.
Okay.
Second.
Commissioner McDonald, Commissioner Vice Mayor Meyer. Any discussion from the City Commission? Any-
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to ask, I should have asked during approval of the agenda, but is there a reason why this was on, I know it pertains to what we just passed in the CRA, but why this wasn't part of our regular City Commission meeting business agenda?
There's another one.
It's really the discretion of the CRA director.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a joint meeting, so
Yeah, okay.
items go together.
Any comments from the public on item number 4? Resolution number 39-2021.
Madam Mayor, I do have a quick comment.
Okay.
This is an area of this park where there is going to be significant room for shade trees. And I know I'll be pushing for that in the plans in different areas. Be a good area for live oaks. So, that's it.
And as this goes forward again, Pinal, we'll have the public know exactly what's going to happen there, and
Right, as part of the phase 2, we will bring this to the community.
okay. Any member of the public has comments now that we've rediscussed this? Did you have your hand up, Ms. McBride? No. Okay. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. We have a consent agenda at this point with regard to minutes, joint
Yeah,
minutes.
it's a good move approval of,
Second.
Okay, did you get that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nobody? Can I make okay. Community Development Board members, do you have any comments or anything for the future?
I have one.
No, ma'am.
I have one thing too, but go on, Mr.
I have one thing. You may know, or not know, that I live off Pond City Road. And I noticed in the paper that there's been a lot of flack about the storage place in odd letters here or there. And I want to give staff a congratulations, and possibly City Commission, if you guys approved it, I don't know. Between what it looked like as a concrete block building driving up US 1 to what it is now. Staff's input into the awnings, the landscaping, painting. It is far more attractive now, frankly, than the glass building across the street. And so I think that staff did an excellent job on it, and regardless of who writes the letters, they should just ignore them.
Was part of their part. Thank you. We're almost there, but I don't know, maybe I'll bring this up in the commission meeting, but since we're talking about sidewalks, I had just mentioned to our city manager about the conflict that I've seen with having a very limited width sidewalk along the Roosevelt Bridge where people fish and people ride their bikes. And maybe if there's a plan, or we can think of something, if there's any future pockets of money coming down or something, work with the DOT to make sure that those plans get put into place if we have the opportunity to do anything there to create a more secure way for bicyclists to cross the old Roosevelt Bridge.
We have applied through the MPO
Yeah.
for a grant to have that
Cantilever.
study, to continue the East Coast Greenway.
Yes, that's
And
what
they'd
we
be
have.
doing a feasibility study for that, of course, you know, how, slow the MPO can work.
It was originally, the FDOT's original plan was to completely deconstruct the lower bridge and not use the drawbridge at all. It was that Save Old Stewart group that actually, as part of the Duani program, got them to save this one span of the bridge. Since then, which would have been the early 90s, they've been trying to get somebody other than FDOT to take over the bridge because they claim that it's between $350,000 and $400,000 a year to maintain and pay the costs associated with it. So whenever you talk to them about sidewalks, they always say, would you like it? You can put them anywhere you want. And
You take the
their
bridge.
response is that they did put a protected, barriered sidewalk on the large bridge. So if you look, it's actually separated by cement rail and the whole thing, and that's their alternative route, although it's completely different, as you guys point out, that, you know, going over a large bridge versus a bridge that's level with the roads is a lot less
They
pedestrian.
also provided a fishing pier
Yeah.
as well, so that, I guess the fishing isn't as good on the pier, I don't know, I'm not a fisherman.
Two different locations.
Yeah.
But the best route for that seems to be continuation of the East Coast Greenway, which is a multi-purpose trail that happens to run right alongside the old Roosevelt Bridge, if you've mapped out the trail.
Just a point, I was talking to Kim Delaney at the Charette walkabout that we had, and she was telling me that the Jupiter Bridge, which has similar problems, they're actually looking at doing a cantilever
Right.
walk
Meredith
that comes
brought
out
that
from
up
that,
before.
so.
That's
that'd
what
be
we're
a-
trying to get, to make sure that we're
That
all,
would be an interesting
push
thing to
forward.
look at, for sure.
if the money comes down the pike.
Right.
If-
Madam Chair, move adjournment of the joint meeting.
One more.
Okay.
You're taking away my benches.
Where?
For example, at the top of Shepherd Park, on the platform up there where the thing is, there used to be a table. You could sit.
Let's wait until it's over. It's just like the storage facility. Believe it or not, when it's done, you're probably gonna like it, but when it's under construction, it doesn't look as good.
And I can't remember that someplace else, you used to have a bench that I could sit at. I can't walk far, so. And that there, so as long as we're not getting rid of benches and putting in sidewalks.
Okay.
Wait till my
Thank you.
commission comments, I got a lot of stuff about this.
Thank you. Yeah,
This was a teaser for the big show.
Second.
Thank you. We'll adjourn this
Okay.
meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got 2 minutes to
Nina?
spare.
Oh, no, it's 5:30. She's gone already.